Service live stream on Fridays. I'm your host, Danny, and today we're going to be talking about this right here, the 64 gene keys. These are how we can convert any emotion, negative or positive, into the most positive emotion on the spectrum of those emotions. And that's what it's going to be all about. The title was to transform all negative emotions into positive emotions. So if you haven't heard of the 64 gene keys, it's the work of Richard Rudd, and he actually based it on the I Ching. And if you've been watching this live stream, you might be a little bit familiar with the I Ching. If you're not, it's an ancient method of Chinese divination from about 2200 BC. So that's about 4,000 years ago. And coincidentally, there is even 64 codons in human DNA. You can see there's the I Ching thing right there. So right here you can see there are 64 possible codons in the human DNA. So if you've studied genetics, you might know this because there are 4 different options, the 4 nucleotides, and you arrange them in order of 3. Okay, so if you take 4 to the each of these has 4 options, and there's 3 of them. So I think it's 4 times 4 times 4, and that gives you 64. So that's how many different ways you can arrange this. And this is how all DNA works. All DNA works through these 64 codons in human DNA. And there are other forms of these codons. But basically, I can nerd out on the bio stuff for a while because I studied bio for a long time. So I'm very familiar with this. Really what you need to know is that the number is the same and that in this organization, they actually came up with the I Ching. This is the I Ching table that I showed you just here, and it's arranged with the nucleotides right here. So you don't need to know the details of this picture here, but I just want to make sure I'm live, okay? Hold on a second. Oh, thank you, Yale. Thank you. Welcome to the stream, Yale, Susan. Talk in the chat if you have any negative emotion. That's what we're going to do today. If you have any negative emotion that you want to see how we can convert it, I wanted to go back and show you just a little bit of how we can convert. So let's look closely. I like number 4 and number 5. I think those are good examples to start with. So this will just give you an understanding of how this works. So he has the shadow form on the left. That's in the red. And then he has the gift, and that turns into the city. And it's actually spelled differently than you might think. The city right here. It's a Sanskrit word for like divine gift or divine expression, right? So we start with the shadow, and then we use the gift to get to the city, okay? So let's take a look at some examples. And some of these are harder to understand than others, and we'll get into that. But we'll start with this. So number 4, intolerance, right? What is intolerance? Intolerance is when we just dislikes, it has a lot of, that word actually has a lot of baggage in our society today, right? People are constantly accusing other people of being intolerant. And I think that that's how he means it here. Like not caring for other people or for other perspectives or whatever it is. You don't tolerate it. You only want what you want and what you see as right. That's intolerance. And then the gift, that is how we can convert into intolerance. The gift is understanding. You can see it here. So we can take intolerance, use understanding, and then achieve forgiveness. And that's the final column here. That's the ultimate expression of the, I guess you could call it a spectrum of emotion. So we go from intolerance to forgiveness. So those are the 2 ends of the spectrum. And some of these are a little less intuitive, more intuitive. He has his whole system based around this idea. He's created an astrological system. If you've heard of human design, his astrological system is very similar to human design, but it's like his own twist on it, and it's based on the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. That's actually where he started with a lot of these, and that's what I'm going to show you guys as we get a little further into it, how this connects to the I Ching. You can see he has the table. This table has the same ones that he has, right? So like we were just talking about number 4 right here. This is on the I Ching this is the table of how you find the hexagram. So this is mountain over water, right? And if you've done I Ching hexagrams with us before, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm going to explain it a little bit later. But first, I want to focus on the actual gene key idea. And I want to show you a little bit about Richard Rudd. I'm going to let him introduce himself so that you can understand where he's coming from. This is his story very briefly. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me pause the music and then play the video. Oh, one more time. All right, there we go.
In 1996, I was in my late 20s. I was living in a small cottage in south of England, and I woke up one morning into a higher state of consciousness. It was as though my whole body was just a field of light. And it was out of that state that lasted 3 days and 3 nights that I was moving through the cosmic field of truth. Extraordinary things were revealed to me in that time. Essentially, the gene keys are this code that you contemplate, and as you contemplate it, it starts to come alive inside you. What I did is I went into these 64 facets of consciousness that at a certain point became known as gene keys. A city is a
All right, so there you go. That's a good introduction. Basically, I've heard him tell his story in longer interviews. Everybody else's story starts with a near-death experience or meditating for days or weeks on end. I have one story that I read about a Qigong student, and he went into the underground of the monastery for 100 days with only one date in the mornings half the time, and then the rest of the time no food, in the dark, and then he had his visions. But this guy, Richard Rudd, he had his visions just after he woke up from going to sleep one day. So, and that's I think that's one of the lessons of following this path, is that you can find the answers in any number of different crazy ways. So that's his story. He went to bed one day and he was basically, he describes it as he was like purely enlightened. He saw like the divine essence in everyone around him. And then it lasted for like 3 or 4 days. And then he went back to normal and he was like, what just happened? And so he actually then came up with this Gene Keys project. I mean, he's written so many books. You go to his website, he's got all sorts of stuff going on, apps and communities, and you know how it is nowadays. But I think it's fascinating because this list is very powerful. And as I said before, we're going to go through some more examples. So before we go through more examples, I went through one example. I want to listen to this one more explanation, basically, of what I'm talking about here.
As my understanding of these 64 universal archetypes that are the core teaching of the I Ching, as they deepened, I had another breakthrough. I realized that these codes aren't actually fixed, but that they fluctuate constantly according to our consciousness. And so I adapted what I'd learned from human design, and it became this. It became the spectrum of consciousness. And this is a map of all the major human states of consciousness, divided into 3 levels, which I call the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi. So now with your birth time, we could see specific patterns of consciousness that governed your life. But these patterns were dependent on frequency. In other words, if you had this 6th gene key, for example, then its low frequency manifests in your life as the shadow of conflict, while its higher frequency, its gift, would be the gift of diplomacy. So that's conflict transformed to a high level. And then at its essence, its highest frequency, or its siddhi, is peace. And peace lies as a latent gift within conflict itself. In a way, you could say that the higher purpose of conflict is peace. But it moves through the revelation of peace, moves through the understanding and the lesson and the education of the gift of diplomacy. So as you'll see later on, this table of the frequencies of consciousness is central to the understanding of how the gene keys work to bring about personal transformation. So now I had this table of frequencies, I began to watch them in my life and in other people's lives.
All right, so that's a good example of how he interprets the gene keys. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through some more examples of converting the each of these negative, he calls them shadow aspects, into the highest aspect. And we can see how we can take some of these negative emotions that we might experience in our life and then apply what he calls as the gift. And I heard a quote yesterday. I was listening to George Thompson on YouTube. He's a British young man turned Taoist, and he's got some very interesting videos. And he said the word responsibility, right? So responsibility, our ability to respond to different things. So basically, if we can use the gene keys or the gene key ideas, the gifts, we can respond to these negative emotions, and then we can transmute the negative situations into these positive situations. And that is one of the things that I have realized is the purpose, or the biggest purpose of our lives, is to learn these great spiritual understandings and then apply them in the most difficult times of our lives. That's really what it comes down to. And when we can transmute these negative situations in our lives, we transform our lives entirely. We transform our relationships. We transform our relationships with other people. We also transform our relationships with things like money, or with our own body, with our health, right? With our profession, with all the things that we're trying to do in our life. We run into these difficulties, and then we usually have these negative reactions. And we have a variety of negative reactions or behaviors that we can see on this list. Right? So if we go back to the list, intolerance, impatience, conflict, inertia, self-obsession, obscurity, vanity, dullness, indifference. These are a bunch of the negative states that we can be in. And I wanted to connect it to what we were talking about last week. Remember the Hawkins scale of consciousness, right? So basically, all of the shadow aspects are on the lower end of this scale. And if you weren't with us last week, basically every single self-help spiritual teaching, from what the Bible is teaching you, what Jesus taught, to Lao Tzu and Buddha, every great spiritual teacher is trying to take you from one of these negative states and push you up into the more positive states, right? Like a basic thing would be going from apathy to willingness, right? Or apathy to courage, which is where the courage is the point. You can see out here, courage is where it transforms into the higher level. Everything that we want to have happen in our lives comes from our ability to stay on the upper half and apply those things to our life. And especially with the way of service, we're teaching that this is how you apply it to the way that you treat other people. Because everything is about relationships in our lives, in human life, really. Everything that we're interested in is about relationships. Money comes from other people. It goes to other people. Money is about exchange with other people. So if you're looking for money, it's really about relationships. Love and relationships, that's self-explanatory. Like if you want family, friends, a great love in your life, a passionate love, the more you're able to apply these higher, as this diagram puts it, the high road, right? The more you can apply that to your life and to other people, the better they're going to respond to you. It's like a positive feedback loop. Whereas if you stay on the negative side, the downside here, the low road, if you apply these to your life, you're going to get the opposite results. Okay? So that's our purpose today, is to look at this list and to try to use it to help us in our lives. And I see Yale and Susan are here. If anybody else is here, say hi in the chat. I don't know if you're here because I haven't figured out how to configure all my stuff yet. So I don't know how many people are watching. But if you're here, talk in the chat. I'm reading all the chats. And what I'd love for you to do is to share a negative emotion that you might have had recently, and then we will go onto this table and start to analyze it. And I've got even more resources from the gene keys to look at any particular emotion that you give us. We'll find it on this chart and we'll see what we can convert it into. So even if you weren't feeling a negative emotion, just share a negative emotion that you can think of, and we will put it into the chart and take a look at how we can transmute it. All right. So we watched the video. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to show you this. This is a great resource for free on the Gene Keys website. So as I said before, we had the intolerance, and then we use understanding, and then we end up in forgiveness, which is the highest state that we can be in on this spectrum, right? So why don't we read Richard's description. He says, if we have this gene key in our profile, or we've contemplated it, he mentions that, we are going to stop needing to know and finally understand. We'll start laughing. Happiness never comes through answers. It only comes when we're so tired of answers that we decide to live the questions fully. Our life radiates the answer, and finally we can relax and be of the deepest service to the world. I hadn't read this yet, so that's why I didn't read it so perfectly. But deepest service to the world, I feel like that is a perfect. That is perfect for us on this channel. Ooh, something just dropped. Yale says, I get wrapped up too much anger based on online comments. That's ironic because we're online, right? All right. Yeah, let's take a look at anger. So I wonder if the word anger, so I've got a little cheat here I'm going to use for this exercise. I downloaded the sample of his Gene Keys book. We're going to search for anger. Is it in there? Okay, I don't think it's on the list. Let's see, what's a corollary of anger? Rage? Okay. Let's try looking at the list and see if we can find something that makes sense. Well, there's conflict. I feel like conflict kind of applies here, right? So let's look at number 6 with his tool. We go to number 6. Rage sounds about right, yeah. All right, Gene Key 6. Every human being is emotionally vulnerable until we dropped our protective defenses. The defenses form around our heart, and as long as our hearts remain defended and closed, they can't heal. So, oh, welcome, Praise Christ Yoga. If you're just joining us, the only thing I want you guys to do is give me a negative emotion. Whatever negative emotion you can come up with, or a challenge in your life. You can just put one word for the emotion, or you can describe what's happening, and we're going to try to use this system to convert it into a positive aspect. So this is the 64 Gene Keys, if you're just joining us. So he has contemplated the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching and basically put a negative emotion, and then he shows how we can transmute it into a positive emotion. So we're working on rage right now, or conflict is one of them. I feel like there might be more than one for anger. So we'll look at conflict and maybe we'll find another one. Praise Christ Yoga says fear. This is great. Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to talk about what you guys want to talk about in this framework. So basically, we take conflict and we apply diplomacy and we achieve peace, right? So as he puts it here, the conflict, he relates it to the battle of the sexes, and then diplomacy, dropping your defenses. And then we achieve peace, building the body of glory. So, yeah, if we can apply diplomacy, if you're having an online battle, it's interesting because starting the way of service, I've only gotten like maybe 2 or 3 troll comments, but I have to really think of like, how do I respond in the way that I would if I were embodying the way of service? In the past, I would just get down on their level and fight with them or tell them that they're wrong. It's like that meme. The wife is like, come to bed, honey. You've been on the computer forever. He's like, I can't. There's still someone who's wrong on the internet. Obviously, the joke being, there's always going to be somebody wrong on the internet. So, Yeah, I mean, diplomacy, that's the one of the biggest gifts, and that's what this is about. The thing in green is the gift. It is the thing that you can apply to the situation to convert it. And I feel like that's the thing to contemplate, is to really understand. And then you can also contemplate how they all work together and how you want to be at peace. That's really the goal. You don't want to fight with people on the internet, right? Let me get the music going. Pretty loud. I've heard this song too many times today. All right, there we go. So diplomacy is what you're going to want to use in that situation, especially if you're talking to somebody you don't know on the internet. How can you drop your defenses and not respond to them with fear, right? And then finally, how can you understand what's going on with them, and how can you help them, right? That's what really we need to figure out. You're talking to somebody online and they're being a jerk. There's something wrong with them. There's something wrong in their life. And you actually have an opportunity to help them. This is the way of service, right? Even though this person, you really don't like them, you don't like them right now. But as Lao Tzu says, our enemies are not demons, but human beings like ourselves, right? And I'm putting a video together. It's been a couple weeks since I released a video because the next one I release is probably going to be about 45 minutes long, and it's going to be fantastic. I'll give you a teaser. It's the 44 insights that I've discovered in the last 20 years of my life studying this stuff, and all lined up in a concise video for you to watch. Really excited to put that out there. And yeah, that was one of the lessons is, how can you, man, I lost the thread. This is what happens when you go live. You can't keep it all together. Keep it together, man. Anyways, so where were we? We're talking about diplomacy, and really helping to understand what's going on in their life, and recognizing that you have an opportunity to help them, right? Let's see if we can apply more. Well, actually, maybe we'll come back to online anger and check out Praise Christ Yoga's request, which is fear. And, anger and fear, actually, I didn't think this was going to be that helpful, but there's all these ways that people have organized emotions. That was another point I wanted to make. So let's go back here before we continue. So the responsibility, right, is our ability to respond. And that occurs in the moment between stimulus and response. So when we are facing a stimulus, like somebody being a jerk online, we can stay in conflict, as you see here, or we can choose diplomacy. And that is our response ability. That's our ability to respond. And that always is the case. Sometimes I feel like, or I know that, people wish they didn't actually have free will because they can blame their circumstance for their behavior. But the fact of the matter is we all have free will. And we love the positive aspects of free will, which is basically all of existence and anything that's interesting. Like the existence wouldn't be interesting without free will. But the other edge of that sword of free will is that you are responsible for your behavior. And so that's what this is about. Can we choose to try to transcend the situation instead of staying on that base level and continuing the cycle of violence, right? So yeah, as I was saying, there's so many ways to organize emotions. And I feel like as I was studying this and trying to find different information about how to convert negative emotions into positive emotions, because a lot of people are interested in this, and I think that the 64 gene keys are one of the most, it's definitely the most ingenious framework that I was able to find, or that I'm familiar with. If you guys have other ideas, definitely put them in the chat. I'd love to know more. I did a little bit of research on this. We talked about it last week. Like I said, every single quote from a spiritual teacher is trying to take you from a lower state into a higher state. But today we're talking about directly understanding the wavelength that the negative emotion is on and how it can be converted into a positive thing. Because basically everything exists with a yin and a yang. Everything that is negative has its positive aspect. That is one of the key tenets of the I Ching and of Taoism, is the yin-yang aspect, the yin-yang symbol. So let's take a look. Let's try fear for Praise Christ Yoga. Let's see what we can find in this list. I don't see fear. There are a lot of breakdowns of fear. So that's what I was telling you. There's so many ways to look at emotions. There's this particular aspect, and this one tries to put the things on the opposite end, so that's actually kind of a useful spectrum. These two things are opposite, right? So scared and peaceful are opposite. So this is like the primary emotion, and then these are more refined emotions, and then out here is the most specific emotion. So the purpose of this kind of diagram is to help people to identify their emotions. A lot of times people are feeling so much that they can't even put their finger on what it is that they're really feeling. And if you can't put your finger on it, then you can't start to identify the source. So the more specific you can be about what emotion it is that you're feeling in the situation, the better you're going to be able to come up with a new way to deal with the situation. So it's like, the first step of solving a problem is admitting you have a problem or identifying the problem, right? And so this is identifying the problem. So you said the word fear, so that's scared right here, but here we have all these other emotions that are more refined. And if you want to discuss any more refined emotion than fear, let me know. If you can come up with, what of these words on the fear side are close to what you're talking about or thinking, because there's so much that falls under fear. In the meantime, praise Christ, if you want to tell us. Otherwise, we're going to take a look at this list and see what we can find that works for fear. Okay? So let's zoom in. All right. We just went over division, conflict. Okay, anxiety. Oh, you know what? That's it. That was one of the ones that I saw that is a really good example. Okay, anxiety. I swear I saw it on here. Yale says, LOL, same. Same for what? Anxiety? Man, I thought I saw anxiety on here, but I guess I didn't. I guess I saw something else related to it. Well, there's a lot on this list that goes with anxiety. There's unease, there's distraction, there's agitation, there's stress, expectation. That's kind of like anxiety. There's a lot of different aspects of anxiety. Kept hoping that one would just pop out to me as the best one to look at. There's so many, with these systems. This one has 64 different ones, and they're organized based on the I Ching, which is it's sort of like a random movement. You think stress? All right. Expectation? Okay. Yeah, let's look at those two. We'll start with stress. So number 52. All right, let's just look at, so there's stress, restraint, and then stillness, right? So I agree with you. Yeah, I feel like this is the closest to anxiety. Stress, the phenotype of fear, it's like, your body gets tight. To me, that is definitely anxiety. And then restraint is the gift. So restraint is like holding back your anticipation of the thing, right? And then the goal is stillness, the stilling of the wave. So going from stress to like this peaceful state, which is basically the opposite of stress or the absence of stress. Talk about stress, please. Okay, sounds good. All right. So let's read what he writes for this particular gene key. This gift has a huge impact on the emotional body. It communicates and exudes calmness throughout the aura. There have always been people in the world who remain completely unflustered by external crises, such as emotional turmoil or human conflict and war. There have always been such people among us, and these are the people of this 52nd gift. So, just to understand where he's coming from, he has a whole astrology system, and he's like, and he shows you a map. If you've looked at human design, it's a map of the energy body, and then which of these keys can be found in it. But what I believe, and as he points out, as you contemplate these, the shadow, the gift, and the, as he calls it, the city, the final expression, you can start to bring it into your life. So he's basically saying that we can take a model from the people who are unperturbed, right? To me, I always go back to Lao Tzu's words. So let's see. I know that there are definitely several passages in here where he talks about being still in great times of trouble. I think we've read this quote many times. Be the people's greatest help. That is the quote. There's too many examples of people here. Yeah, here we go. Interesting. So there's water in this example. He says nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, and also he mentions here the stilling of the wave. So perhaps the lesson here is if we can be more like water, we can avoid anxiety and fear and stress. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard. The gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice. Therefore the master remains serene in the midst of sorrow. Evil cannot enter his heart. Because he has given up helping, he is the people's greatest help. True words seem paradoxical. Yeah, so if you can be like water, and to me, water, one of the biggest lessons from water is humility. It's like being humble and being able to flow through the situation, being unaffected, being soft, and accepting what happens. I guess I'm a little confused by this term restraint, but I guess I would understand it as, I guess the way we just described is to be humble in the situation, and I feel like stillness is almost what I would think of more. Like I would take a deep breath and, re-understand the situation. One of the things I've learned from my study is that basically fear is the ultimate falsehood, because fear is ultimately based on the idea or the fear of death. So basically all negative emotions go back to the fear of death, which comes from identifying with the physical body and believing that the physical body is the ultimate. You can see here on this spectrum, death is at the bottom, right? So fear is ultimately a fear of death. And it's false because we are not the body. And, as I've discussed in my other videos, this is what all spiritual teaching is telling you, is you are not the body, you are spirit, you are an eternal being, you are connected to God. So identifying as the body and being fearful of things in the physical realm is a falsehood, and it is leading you down the bottom end of this spectrum. And as we discussed last week, shame is at the bottom because it is a negative feeling about your physical body, and it is identifying with the physical body together. So it is both the falsehood of identifying with the physical body and the falsehood of applying negative judgment to yourself. So that's why shame is at the bottom of this scale. And as you can see in this scale, and there's a few other ones that show this, basically when you go lower than shame, you end in death. So if you stick with this identification with the physical body for long enough, and you see it as a negative thing, eventually your spirit will escape the physical body, and you will actually end up back at the top, connected to God, which is what happens in the afterlife. So ultimately, death is not something to be feared. Fear is a liar. There's actually a song called "Fear is a Liar." It's a really good song. So that's my take on fear. Fear is like primary, whereas there's fear, and then the opposite has often been described as love. And a lot of people would see this top of the spectrum as love, although love shows up here. Everybody has a different take on it. But basically love, joy, peace, and enlightenment all go together, and they are the opposite of fear. One of my favorite philosophers, Mark Passio, talks about, he has two basically paths of our life. On the fear path, you are afraid of the truth, and so you stay in ignorance, and then you head down the dark road to slavery to the body, slavery to other people, basically all the negative things that you can imagine. And then the other end of the spectrum is freedom, which comes from love of knowledge, seeking knowledge and understanding, and then loving that, and then you end up with freedom, because that's the truth. Yale says, this reminded me of my favorite Lao Tzu quote. Oh, you have a favorite Lao Tzu quote. I love it. Yale says, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. I love that one too. That one's so good. Yeah. And so anytime we're not in the present moment, again, when you're anxious for the future, so there's two aspects to fear, right? There's actual fear of death, which is a lie. And there's also fear of things not going well in our life. And I think that's the fear that we really identify with, because we're not often actually afraid of dying. But the idea that something is going to not go right in our life is based on the same fear of dying, because we're afraid that I will die before I have this thing happen, or this thing that I want to have happen, this change, So if you're afraid of something not happening in your life the way you want it to happen, it's because you think you're never going to get there. But because we are eternal beings, we have an infinite amount of time to achieve it. And also, God and the spirits and the universe are there to support us and help us to achieve that thing. And if we have a desire to achieve it, we ultimately can achieve it. That's taught in every mystical tradition in New Age, and also by Lao Tzu. He had a quote, everything is possible from here. Actually, I can play it because I had it queued up. Let's see if I can pull it up. I wanted to play some of this fantastic Lao Tzu quote video, and now's my chance. Here we go. I even remember the moment of it because, yeah, there we go. All right. I gotta go this way and then like this. Okay. Pause the music and turn up the volume. And here's the quote.
Your own positive future begins in this moment. All you have is right now. Every goal is possible from here. If lightning...
So there you go. That's another fantastic Lao Tzu quote read by that guy. He does a great job. Turn the music back on here. So, got some quotes from Yale. Let's see what he says. He says, I was going to debate that by saying there is social fear, but I remember hearing something about why we hate public speaking. And it is because historically, if you were speaking publicly, it was because you were pleading for your life. Holy shit. Not sure how true that is. That's really interesting. My guess about that is that public speaking is scary because, yeah, I mean, in historically, it probably didn't benefit you that much to speak publicly unless you're really smart or you're trying to be like the leader or you were the leader of a group. And you're putting your neck out there. You're saying something. You're probably saying something important. You're trying to make an argument or something, and you're putting your status in that social group on the line. I think there's really there's good reason to be afraid of public speaking. I sometimes get a little nervous when I'm about to do this live stream, and I'm just going with, I just trust God that he's going to help me get through this, because it's not easy to be in front of other people and share your honest thoughts. It's just so many, and one of the reasons it's easy to do nowadays is because if somebody doesn't like it, hey, they're just going to click off. What's the worst that can happen? If somebody doesn't like what I'm saying, they don't have to watch. It's really not a big deal. But historically, if you were speaking physically in front of other people, they were probably really important people in your life, people in your community who, if they decide they don't like you, if a bunch of them decide they don't like you because of what you said, you're in big trouble. You're probably going to get exiled. And being exiled, 5,000 years ago in a tribal society meant death. So that'd be my understanding of it. But yeah, I think and what you're saying is basically related to what I was saying earlier, which is that all fears stem from fear of death. And, ultimately, if we can transcend our fear of death, that is how we attain the greatest things in our lives. I feel like this is actually a great moment to get into this diagram, which I didn't get into last week, but I had queued up, and I think it's a great one. It's very interesting. So the bottom triangle, if you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but if you are, this is exactly Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the person who created this, T.J. Reeves, will give him credit, he actually created an exact inversion of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So let's go through it really quickly, right? So he says life starts here. We actually start this diagram at the bottom. And the first thing someone needs is their physiological needs, right? Do I have enough water? Do I have food? Do I have a place to excrete? As in, do I have shelter? And I actually have done some study of the different aspects of survival, and the most important thing is air, right? So you'll die in 3 minutes without air. The second most important is actually shelter. You'll die within 3 hours without shelter if you're in a place that is, cold, or even just like 50 or 60 degrees with rain, like low 60s with rain. If you have no clothing or shelter, you might die if you don't seek good shelter. So shelter is second after air, and then the third one is water, because you will die within 3 days without water. And then the next one is food. You'll die within 3 weeks without food, depending on how much fat stores you have and whatever. So that's the lowest level. And then the next level is, do I have consistent income? Am I safe from harm? So it's very related to the physiological needs, but it's a little more abstract. So versus, do I have enough food or do I have enough income? It's a little fudgeable, right? So we're getting up into, as he puts it here, you see you're self-oriented. So kind of the difference between that level and the next level is like understanding the world. So at the lowest level, you could basically be an animal. Like animals are in this level most of the time. And then now that you're human, you can start to understand the world. And then the next level after understanding the world is understanding other people. How are my relationships? Am I loved? Do I have friends? So this scale, if you're not familiar with it, again, it's really like if you're trying to figure out how to have friends, but you're really hungry, you're going to have a hard time, right? That's just an example of it. Or if you're trying to figure out how to improve your relationships, but you don't have a job and you don't have a source of money, you're going to be focused on the source of money before you're going to be able to figure out, how you can improve your relationships. So this scale shows us how we approach our life and how we can actually improve things, because we have to have the foundations in place in order to get to the higher levels. We'll just go through this a little quickly because I want to get to the highest part. That's what's really interesting and the new idea. So after your relationships, do I have friends? Then it's like, well, what do my friends think of me? What is my standing with my friends or with the people who I work with? How well respected am I? How well are my ideas taken? And then the highest level in the Maslow hierarchy of needs is actualization of your skills and your craft in your life. Like, how can you achieve meaning through the things that you do in your life? But the person who created this had this spiritual understanding, right? So it's very interesting. This reflection, we actually go back down the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and we are letting go. Each one of these starts with letting go. So first thing we do is we let go of the actualization, which is trying to master your life skills. You let go of perfection. You let go of trying to be the absolute best in whatever it is that you're doing. You don't let it go as far as like you don't keep trying to improve, but you let it go in terms of like allowing it to define how you see yourself or whether you're successful in life. Letting go of perfection is a very powerful thing. I was talking with my wife about this, and I was like, yeah, I think you're kind of a perfectionist. And she was like, whoa. And it just blew her mind because she realized like, her dad's a perfectionist. And so she got it. And so she's always trying to be perfect in all the things she's doing. And it leads to anxiety, as we were talking about. It's an anxious state to be in. But the first step there is to let go of perfection, right? And then as we continue, we go from wondering how well respected I am to letting go of the need of other people's opinions or other people's approval, right? So that is the next thing that we can let go of. Then we get to the next level. Do I have friends? How are my relationships? And we let go of the need to keep others. We learn how to give love to everyone unconditionally. So instead of being concerned about if other people like you or if they are your friend and you can count on them or, basically what can you get from them, we think about what can we give to others and we let them go. It's like the old saying, if you let a bird go and then it comes back, then it was yours all along. But if it doesn't come back, then it was never yours. So that's the next level. And then we take the next level, which is, do I have consistent income? Do I have shelter? Am I free from harm? And then we let go of the need for certainty and security and learn to live in uncertainty. And you can see here, he's like, this little note here, only 15% of people get even to this lower level. Lower level. This highest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs focused on the physical world. And then less than 15% enter this like spiritual perspective. And here he is, most yogis are able to get to loving everyone unconditionally, but even most yogis can't let go of the need for certainty and security. I don't think I've let go of that. I would love to. I'm letting go of it more than ever in my life before, but I haven't let go of it totally. And so, legends reach that level, and then mythic heroes reach this level, and then immortals reach the last level. So we'll go over the last two levels here. So, I think did I miss one? So esteem. So there's 6 here, and then there's 6 here. Okay, I see. Yeah. So this one, this next level, the mythic heroes level, this corresponds to the physiological needs. Do I have enough water? Do I have enough food? Let go of the need for physiological safety. Be willing to sacrifice yourself for a greater cause. That's very powerful. And part of me, when I started the way of service, and like I said before, is like this fear of speaking in front of people, sharing your ideas. I had to let go of that. And so, I think people will have glimpses of these things on occasion. So I feel like I've had that glimpse of letting go of the need for physiological safety. I don't know if I can actually do it on a regular basis, but I feel like I did kind of let go of that on one level when I started this project, because I'm taking a risk to put my face on the internet and to share my ideas freely. but I believe it's what I'm supposed to do. So I was able to decide, you know what, God will protect me. If the crazies or, you know, the system that I criticize the system plenty. You know, I criticize corporations, I criticize the government in my videos. If they don't like me and they want to come for me, so be it. You know, so be it. Do your worst, okay? But because God's going to protect me, you know, in this life or the next. So that is what I believe. And then the final level is let go of the grip of the fear of death. Learn to achieve your dreams or die trying. Recognize the truth of no self. And that's that last part. Oh, there's another great quote. It's actually in this video. Let's see. Let's find it. I'm gonna find it. Let's find it in the transcript and then go to it. Oops. What in the heck? Yeah. The self. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Hope and fear are both phantoms that arise from thinking of the self. When we don't see the self as self, what do we have to fear?
It's so good. Let's play it again.
Is from thinking. Hope and fear are both phantoms that arise from thinking of the self. When we don't see the self as self, what do we have to fear? Water.
Oh, I love this video. I've watched it so many times. YouTube probably is like, we just got to show him this video. He'll just keep watching it. That's how we get him to keep watching videos. It's so good. Yeah, so when we don't see the self as self, what do we have to fear? Right? That is the quote. Susan says, shrinking inside when being admonished. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, well, let's see if we can find it on the chart and transmute that emotion. And see if we can put our finger on that emotion. I actually have another tool to help us identify these emotions that you guys are sharing. Not that one. This one. Yeah. So on this chart, we have, like, let's look at, which one were we just looking at? We were looking at number 52. So number 52 is over here. Yeah, stress, restraint, and stillness. But then we have the negative, or the like, he calls it the introverted or repressed aspect of it, and then the extroverted or reactive aspect of it, which is stuck or restless, right? So we'll see if we can find, there are so many ways to categorize, emotions and to understand them. And I don't think many people have it figured out. I was talking about this earlier, but I don't know if I finished this point. Basically, I don't think anybody's got this totally figured out. Really understanding emotions is, it seems like it's kind of, the study is in its infancy. I've always heard the idea that emotion is emotion, energy in motion. And our understanding of energy and how it moves through the human body, the energy body, are all extremely in their, basically the energy body is denied by science. So that puts it at level 0. They have no understanding of the energy body, and they have no understanding of how energy moves. And there's so many, alternative medicine theories that say that emotions get stuck in our bodies and in certain spots. So I think that this understanding of emotion and of energy in motion, emotion, is in its infancy. So you and I can we're all trying to figure it out together, okay? I think that the most important thing to recognize is this scale, and to understand that any wisdom that you come across is trying to move us from the low end of the scale to the high end of the scale, as we discussed last week. Zachariah is in the chat. Welcome. I'm glad you're joining us. So good to see you, my friend. Yale says, I'm not sure I agree. We should disregard personal safety even at the highest levels. Yeah, and I think that this chart, he's not like saying like just totally disregard it, right? It's more like, you do it because you are trying to achieve something. Achieve your dreams or die trying. Be willing to sacrifice yourself for a greater cause. And it really, to do that properly, really takes a high understanding of what's going on. You really need to be being led by God, being led by your intuition. And I think there's plenty of examples of people in history who have said that they believe that, and maybe they were wrong. So yeah, be careful. Don't try this at home, folks. Don't try this at home. Like the chart says, mythic heroes and immortals are allowed to do this. The rest of us, I think we should start with the bottom two, or definitely the bottom three. Let go of perfection, let go of the need for other people's opinions, and let go of the need to keep others, loving everyone unconditionally. And just practicing those three things is going to help us see glimpses of the higher truths. I think that there is a time when you should be fighting for a cause and being willing to sacrifice yourself for that cause. And like I mentioned, I kind of feel like I'm taking that road in some ways with this channel. I don't know where this is going to lead. Where will I be 20, 30 years from now? If it's a dark future where truth is suppressed, I will be in trouble for sharing these things. I don't think that that's the future, but anything is possible. Maybe a lot of signs say that things are getting worse in a lot of ways. So, and I pray every day. I believe that our actions and our behavior helps to avoid that outcome. But when I look at the average person and the decisions that the people in power are making, there's good reason to be concerned. So, maybe better to face these fears now, to be able to understand that maybe someday you will have to sacrifice your life for the cause. Because to do otherwise is to undermine all the things that you believe in. And I think we ultimately will be forgiven for even that in the next life. But I think we'll be happier and better off if we do stand by the things that we truly believe in. So that's what I think about it. Tell me what you think in the chat. We got a lot of chats. This is great. Yale says, I have one more story about that. Text while coming. I'll summarize, okay? A very devout believer loves and prays to God every day. One day a hurricane is coming, and they give an order to evacuate. The man says, no, I will stay, and God will protect me. Dude, we tell this story, a version of this story my wife and I reference so often. It's so funny you're telling it. I love it. It's synchronicity. It's almost 333. That's why. 332. All right. And a truck comes, and get in the truck. The flood is coming. The man says, no, God will protect me. And then a boat comes. No, God will protect me. And then the waters rise, and he's on the roof of the house, and a helicopter comes. He says, sir, get in. No, God will protect me. And then the flood takes him, and he meets God in heaven. He says, what happened? Weren't you going to protect me? God says, what are you talking about? I sent you a truck, a boat, and a helicopter. Fantastic story, Yale. Thank you for bringing that story up right now. That is amazing. Yeah, that is... So... You're saying, like, don't disregard your personal safety. One of the biggest reasons you disregard your personal safety is because you finally have faith in God that he's going to protect you. I mean, how many times has God protected you? Be honest, okay? Even the atheists out there, you try me on this one, okay? How many times have you been in a situation where you should have gotten hurt or killed and you didn't? I can't even count, okay? I can't even count. Like, just think about how... This is something I realized recently. if the world wasn't like held together by God and the angels and basically like, this intelligent network that forms creation and the universe, you would die like every other day. Like a car would hit you, whatever, just something would go wrong, like your heart would stop, all the things that have to happen to keep you alive every day. We take them for granted. And, if we really understood the truth, we would understand that we are protected. And so that would alleviate our fear. And then we can act the way that we're supposed to act. We can act as our authentic selves, share our truth, share our gift with the world. That's what the way of service is all about. Hey, like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. Hit the like button, subscribe. We'll hit it on a high note right there. Yeah, Yale says, think of how many generations of people had to exist to get you here today. Yeah, that's a big one. The debate between having kids or not having kids. What strikes me as so crazy about not having kids is like there's been this endless line of evolution that led to you, and now you're like, no thanks. And look, having kids is not for everybody. And I've realized recently, because we used to be very like, you got to have kids. That's like the point of life. Now I understand that, everyone's spiritual path is different. And it's, deciding to have kids as like the most important thing in life is to worship the material, right? It's to say what we do in the material world is the most important thing. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe the most important thing is for you to share your gift, to help people spiritually, whatever it might be. It might not be to have kids, and I understand that now. But what Yale just said is a big thing. It's like, even if you don't have children, just recognizing what a gift it is for you to be living and how many millions of years of life had to succeed and live in order for you to live. That's actually something that I talk about. Even if you have the spiritual perspective, if you have the reincarnation perspective that I do, if you believe in reincarnation, even with that, you have to understand you have lived thousands of lives to live this life you're living now. So even with the perspective of reincarnation, you cannot take your life for granted. And not taking your life for granted, also recognizing how you are blessed to have it and how you are protected. The very fact that you exist shows that you are protected. All right, let's go back into the chat here. I feel like I missed a couple. I didn't forget about you, praise Christ. Okay, you and Susan, I didn't forget about you either. Shrinking inside when being admonished. We're gonna get back into those emotions and see what we can do with them. I do want to read these chats, and then we'll go back to that. Zach says, Gandhi said, they may torture my body, break my bones, even kill me. Then they will have my dead body, but not my obedience. Exactly. Right? They can never take away your free will. That is the ultimate truth, and that's been spoken of by Gandhi in this quote. There are, I forget the guy who wrote the memoir about being in a concentration camp, but basically one of the lessons was, even if they take away every freedom outside of your body, they chain you to a chair, whatever it is that they do to you, they don't take away your free will, no matter what they do. Praise Christ Yoga says, I like that analogy, Yale. That's right. Yeah. Or that story. That's one of my favorite stories. It's so funny. It's a comic strip. It's a comic strip from God. I just want to get the music going again. All right. Yale says, I found it the other day, antinatalism is the thing. Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. Antinatalism. Exactly. Those people need some way of service, because how sad is your life when you feel like bringing a life into this world is a sin? Yeah, well, dang, man. Yeah, I mean, I brought it up, so I'll talk about it. Yeah, antinatalism, it's definitely a sign that you have a dark view of the world. You've got a lot of fear, and there's things that went wrong in your life for you to have that perspective. So I have a great compassion for that perspective. And my first reaction is, you think the world is difficult or bad, just go back in time and look at all the different things that have happened to humanity and people still had kids anyways. And that's why you're here, is that your great 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 grandparents or whoever they were, they faced the Black Plague, they faced World War I and II, they faced poverty and lack of food, famines, whatever situation, and they lost children, they had children and they died. So is your life that much worse? And maybe it is. I don't know. I don't want to judge or say one way or another, but it's important to have that perspective, and then also to recognize that, that's the purpose, as you said, that they need some way of service. That's one of the purposes of the way of service, is to help you understand the perspectives that allow you to see that you are valuable, that your life is great. Your life isn't great, but the fact that you are alive is a great thing, and it's a great gift that you can give to the world, and you can improve your life by changing your perspective, by understanding that bringing your gift, giving your gift to the world is what you're meant to do. You will be supported by God and by the universe in that action. And by having faith, these problems will be solved by God in one way or another. And they will solved by other people. Like, there are so many things that are there to support you. We're here to support you. I'm here to support you. So anyway, that's what all the content's about. I hope that message gets through with what I'm putting out there. All right, so yeah, let's go back. Let's go back to Susan and Praise Christ. You guys both gave us some emotions to try to find on this chart and to try to transmute. So let's go to Susan's idea, shrinking inside when being admonished. Okay. Judgment. Let's see if we turn this down a little bit. Judgment, integrity, perfection. I think that's judgment that you're applying to someone else. It's not quite what you're saying, but more like judgment being applied to you by other people. Maybe oppression. Oppression? Interesting. Inadequacy. Those both seem like good ones. Let's look at those. So that was 47 and 48. Oppression, the magic mirror. Transmutation, the royal art. That's in the title of this live stream, transmutation, right? Transfiguration, the true meaning of the crucifixion. So, as I said, this guy's got a lot of different ideas going into this stuff. Let's see what we can draw out of this. The bottom line is that our oppression, the particular nuances and flavors of our suffering and karma during this lifetime. So he's defining oppression as it's almost like a spiritual oppression. Suffering and karma during this lifetime are exactly equivalent to the greatness of our inner light. Their purpose is to awaken that light. So he's taking the negative external factors that we experience in our life, and he's saying that you're experiencing those negative factors so that you can become the great person that you're supposed to become. And this is an idea that we've talked about in a lot of the videos, that even the worst thing, it has its positive aspects, and it has the things that it taught you, and maybe you needed that really terrible thing to happen for you to reach this higher level. I don't feel like this is exactly what Susan was asking about, so let's see if we can figure out a little more. Let's actually go to 48, see what that one is about. So inadequacy, I feel like what you're saying is you're feeling inadequate. When somebody criticizes you, you're feeling inadequacy, right? And then the gift to transform that is resourcefulness, the light at the bottom of the well. And that brings you to wisdom, the beyondness of being and not being. Interesting. So my interpretation of this is that when you're feeling inadequate, you recognize the gifts that you do have. So when you feel criticized, you understand that you actually do have positive things that the person who is criticizing you of probably doesn't have. You have your set of gifts That is your resourcefulness. Even in the darkest experience, your soul still has all of the power that you came to this earth with, and all the gifts that you have to give. And then I guess wisdom being at the other end of inadequacy. I guess my interpretation of this is that the wisdom is my understanding of wisdom is its action of understanding in the world. So wisdom is knowing that you are valuable and knowing what your value is, and then bringing that into the world regardless of the inadequacy that you might feel or the criticisms that people might give you. It's like acting the right way even though other people are criticizing you, basically being immune to their opinions, which is what we were just talking about, right? Let go of the need for other people's opinions. That's a big one that I know, and it's challenging for me. Starting an online YouTube channel, I'm gonna get criticized, and I gotta just keep going and be okay with what people might say that's negative about me. And you take something from it. I mean, there's always a seed of truth maybe in the criticism. Maybe you can improve yourself, but also recognizing that you don't have to, and that person's opinion doesn't define you. That's a great message and why we watch. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Zachariah says, sounds like embarrassment. Right. Yeah, embarrassment. All right, let's see if we can find some more that relate to that idea. Victimization. I feel like that is sort of on the same level. Let's see what he says about victimization. Sorry, that was number 55. 55. Victimization, Indra's net. Freedom, the spirit of the future epoch. Freedom, the great change. Interesting. So a lot of this guy's stuff, he's talking about very high spiritual ideas, like, kind of new agey visions of the future. So kind of have to filter it through that. But I still think there's a lot of value in understanding, taking the shadow and applying the gift. So let's see if we can figure it out here. We can't chase freedom. We can't run out and sell everything and drop our dreams and become a monk or hermit drifting about. We have no chance of dropping our dreams. So we have to be patient. Freedom will come on its own without our doing anything. We have to live as a human with all the trappings and trimmings, and from within that, our freedom will arise. Interesting. So he's basically like victimization. The opposite of freedom is slavery, right? So that's kind of how he's equating victimization. A lot of people feel like they are victims of their lives, victims of their circumstances. And as he says, we have to accept our trappings as human beings. It's like that. It's like that Marcus Aurelius quote. Let's see if I can pull that one up. So it's like staying in bed covers blankets. No? Bed. Oh. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Oh, here it is. Yes. Okay. So this is about really facing our life and accepting that we're human beings. In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, when you get up and you don't want to, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I exist and for which I was brought into the world? Or have I been made for this, to lie in the bedclothes and keep myself warm? But this is more pleasant. Dost thou exist then to take thy pleasure, and not all at all for action or exertion? So it's just perfect. We're not designed to stay in bed, right? We're designed to get up and do all the things that we're supposed to do as human beings. All right. Again, I love this system, but I almost wish I want to rewrite it for him. I want to fix it up, because a lot of these are so abstract as to be not quite useful, as not as useful as I wish they were. So I hope that was helpful, Susan. And then let's see, praise Christ. I know you had said something, expectation. Let's see if we can find expectation. Let's see. Complexity, superficiality, compromise, mediocrity. I feel like that's a good one for Susan. If you're feeling mediocre because somebody criticizes you, that word mediocrity really makes me feel like somebody is shrinking into themselves. They're not proud of themselves. They're not excited. So let's look at that one, number 8. Mediocrity, beyond the comfort zone, style, a rebel with a cause. So to me, it's again, it's what I was saying earlier. When somebody criticizes you and you feel mediocre, recognize that you have your own style. You have your own way of doing life. And then exquisiteness is really to be super proud and to really shine your light on the world in your particular style. So that's how you escape mediocrity. Let's see what he says. We need not fear mediocrity so long as our heart is open and singing. We no longer need to react to it and find ourselves at odds with the status quo. True style is found in the marketplace, living as an example of a true rebellious human being, unchained by external definitions and unfettered by conditioning, ancestral or cultural. So yeah, it's about being yourself. Authenticity. I'm gonna talk a lot about authenticity in my next video. I'll tell you the quick story, especially if you've made it this far in the live stream, and if you have, hit the like button if you hadn't already. Click that like button, smash that like button. But yeah, the story. In one of the near-death experiences, he's speaking with his spirit guide. And his spirit guide says to him, in order to get into these higher levels of heaven, what do you think you need? Just to ask him. And he says, love? And the spirit guide kind of chuckles, and he's like, I thought you would say that. A lot of people guess love. But he said, actually, the first thing that you need is authenticity. And it's because authenticity is love of yourself. And if you don't love yourself, you can't truly love others. You're kind of loving others from a place of insecurity, and you're not loving them in your true way. So the first thing is authenticity. That's the first rule of heaven, is what the spirit guide was telling this individual in his near-death experience. And I think that rings very true for me. Susan says, gives me more information to move forward. Thank you. Good. If we can come up with more, I would love to. So let me know if you have more emotions. I'll just leave this chart on the screen. And if anybody wants to look into any of these, we will do that. Again, we've got, I think, 10 minutes left in the live stream. I guess 7 minutes, but maybe we'll go a little longer. Let's say 10 minutes. Put any negative emotion you can come up with in the chat, and we'll try to see if we can transmute it. I had so much more material I wanted to get to, and it's already been an hour and a half. I hope that means it's been a good live stream. Yale says it's 42 expectation, I think. Did I see it wrong? Being inauthentic is a disconnect between speech and action or thought and action. Right. And I've also heard that in heaven you cannot lie. And maybe that's, to your spirit guide or something. It's like you tell them one thing and you're actually feeling something else, and then you can just see right through you. I think that that's true. All right, 42, expectation. Let's see. Expectation. Okay. Yeah. Wait, you're right. Expectation. There it is. All right, let's look at that. Number 42. Thank you, Yale. Appreciate that. Expectation. So expectation, waiting at the expectation station. I don't know what he means by that. I have heard this about expectation. Expecting is planning to be disappointed. It's a pretty good quote. The gift to transmute it is detachment, the reader and the writer. And then the ultimate outcome is that we're seeking is celebration, the punchline. So my understanding of this, just my first glance of it, is expectation is we're waiting around for what it is that we want. The correct way to approach that is actually to be detached from the outcome, or detached from our expectations, letting go of the situation and letting it evolve the way it's going to evolve. And then the ultimate outcome is to celebrate actually what is happening, to appreciate what is happening. Reminds me of, the two most important things in life are forgiveness and gratitude. And so celebration is like gratitude for whatever it is that's happening, be it what you were expecting or not. Richard says, when we go into this, we'll discover that what blissfulness feels like. We'll touch the ecstatic realms where the mind lets go, where thinking comes to an end. When thoughts do come, they're the thoughts of God, so they only engender more bliss. We'll become like a child again, and life becomes heaven on earth. Interesting. So the mind lets go, that's detachment, and then we let God into us, and then we have celebration of life. Yeah, can't argue with that. I agree. That's a Schoolhouse Rock, isn't it? Expectation Station. I don't know if it's a Schoolhouse Rock, but it could be, right? Conjunction, junction, what's your function? All right, we got a minute and 26. I'm going to go through a few more of these examples. I feel like that's the most useful thing. So some of the easier examples, we went through 4. Did we do 5? Let's see. Yeah, I like this one a lot. Impatience, being in a state of impatience, and then you apply patience. And then the ultimate thing is timelessness. And I really identify with this because I have practiced meditation, and I feel like part of my awakening, like I've shown you guys, all the Lao Tzu quotes and the Taoist stuff, and almost every Taoist instruction, at least the original ones from the I Ching, they're about being in the present moment, being centered, and understanding that time is an illusion. Like Yale said, that quote that you gave us earlier, Yale, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. That explains it. Like, everything is in the present, and so that is timelessness. That is how, and like patience to me is recognizing that your timeline that you want for something, again, it's like expectations. It's letting go of your expectation and understanding that things happen the way they have to happen. And that you are timeless. Time doesn't have to exist for you. You don't have to have this attachment to things happening on a schedule that you want them to happen on. So let's look at, I've got a few more here that are very intuitive, and I think they're the most helpful that I could come up with. So let's take a look. That was 5, and now we'll look at 6. Also, you can see, let's see if this corresponds with the I Ching hexagram, right? So it's number 5 of the I Ching. Number 5 is waiting. You can see this is the ancient Chinese wisdom is exactly connected with this. So the instruction is waiting. That's the situation that you might find yourself in. The study of the I Ching is so powerful because we often have these expectations for what is happening in our life. But when we consult the I Ching, the spirits have a chance to tell us, well, actually, you want this to happen, but you need to wait. Now is a time of waiting for you. So understanding that, there's a quote in the Wahoo Ching about this, and I think it's worth reading. Yeah, here we go. One of the most important practices for beginners is the study of the I Ching, which enables one to perceive the hidden influences in every situation and thus establish a balanced and spiritually evolved means of responding to them. So basically the idea is that there are hidden influences. The universe has its own rhythm. And when you're not in tune with that, as we are in our daily life, I think he's got more quotes about this. Yeah, here, this is a great quote. Exactly. This is what I'm saying. So today, people lead hysterical, impulsive lives, ignoring the subtle alterations of yin and yang which influence all things. They become confused, exhausted, and frustrated. However, even today, one can restore wholeness and clarity to one's mind. The way to do this is through the study of the I Ching. Like the cycle of day and night, everything is a Tai Chi, incorporating movements between yin and yang. If you do not see the patterns in these movements, you are lost. But if you consult the I Ching with an open mind, you will begin to see the patterns underlying all things. Knowing that daybreak will come, you can rest peacefully at night. When you accurately perceive the fluidity of things, you also begin to perceive the constancy behind them, the creative, transformative, boundless, immutable Tao. To see this is the ultimate education and the ultimate solace. Very powerful. So there is a time and a place for all of these things, right? And we can cast the coins for the I Ching, and it will help us to understand our situation. We've done that on this live stream many times. But we're coming to the end of the live stream pretty soon, so I want to just read a few more of these and then wrap up. If there's any more... Eleanor's here. Hello, Eleanor. I Ching, just yay I Ching. I know Eleanor's a big fan of the I Ching stuff, and so am I. The I Ching is kind of one of the first things that got me going on this path. Welcome to the live stream, Eleanor. Unfortunately, we are near the end, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fun. All right, let's take a look at a couple more. So that was number 5. Let's take a look at number 6. I have that labeled as another good one. Oh, we already did this one. All right, we can skip it and go to 9. Let's try 9. Yeah, inertia. Using determination, and then we get to invincibility. So when we're stuck on the couch, we're stuck in a bad pattern, something that's been in our life for a long time, but we're stuck. We use determination, and we get to the state of being invincible, where it's like nothing external to us will ever stop us from doing what we're going to do. The dilemma of this gene key is perspective. If we're looking up at the whole mountain, we'll feel overwhelmed. If we decide just to look down at our feet, we'll be captivated. The taming power of the small teaches us to focus on small changes rather than attempting great things. The taming power of the small, that is the I Ching. The I Ching perspective on this. So he's interpreting this, the taming power of the small, as the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the steps underneath your feet right now. Any big project, so that's a great way of looking at it. Any big project, you look at how difficult it is to get this done. It's like trying to move a mountain. No, it's like taking the next step. That is the determination factor. So that was a good one. I enjoyed that one. All right, what are some other good ones? Let's see, 43, 44. Let's see, 40. We only have time for a couple more. 43, 44, 52, 54, 59, 23. Which number do you guys want to do? Just put a number in the chat. I'm going to go to 43 first, and then we'll do a couple more. You guys put the numbers in. 44, 52, 54, 59, 23. So having deafness, right? So being unable to hear, using insight to transcend your inability to understand what's going on or hear what is going on, using your insight, and then reaching an epiphany. I think, so deafness. I feel like this deafness word is getting me. I wonder what he means by that. If we don't waste energy being someone we're not, we don't follow someone else's purpose. True insight makes life simpler, not more complex. It's funny that the more evolved we become, the simpler we make our lives. It seems to be a mystical equation. Interesting. I'm not sure what he means by deafness, so I'm not sure why I put this one on there. All right, Eleanor says let's do 23. Sounds good to me. Complexity and simplicity. Quintessence. Quintessence. Do I have to look up this word? It's like refinement. It's like, I guess it's like simplicity, like experienced, right? So complexity, splitting the world apart. Something I believe is true is that as we descend this scale, things become more and more complex, you know? As we get further away from God, God is like oneness. It is everything. He is everything in oneness. But then we get down to this, it's like we are identifying with the physical world, the very specific of our life. So that's the complexity of existence. So the more complex things are, I feel like the further from God that they are. So that's what this is saying. If we use simplicity, we can reach this higher state. Let's read what he says. Learn to love through your hands. Give time for your hands to shape and express the beauty of your quintessence. Caress life. Release life. Let it slip through your fingers with a smile. Reach out and touch the world around you. Touch the hearts of those around you. Touch the trees. Touch the creatures of our world. Touch your own body. Stroke your wounded heart back to life. So I feel like what he's speaking about here is like working with your hands versus, we're always working with our minds and trying to figure everything out. And so there's a simplicity in working with our hands. I like that. All right, I'm going to do one more. 52, 54, 59. I'm not going to wait for an answer because we're going to move on to 59. Let's see what it is. Oh, this is such a good one. Yeah. All right, so when we're stuck in dishonesty, we can use intimacy to reach transparency. So dishonesty being the opposite of transparency. And intimacy is, if you really want to have a relationship with somebody, you have to be willing to be intimate with them on some level. If you're dishonest, you don't actually have a relationship with someone. People who are dishonest all the time don't actually have any real friends or, they don't really have relationships because nobody knows the real, what they really are about. They can't trust them. So they're not going to connect with them. And that's just the way it is. So we use intimacy to get out of dishonesty and we reach a state of transparency. I'm curious what the I Ching dispersion. Gentle breeze dancing on moving water. So it's like wind moving through water or dissolving water. So it's like water being this dense thing like dishonesty and being dissolved by the air. The experience of being in love is the prelude to our future awareness. It doesn't generally remain because we haven't awakened enough for that frequency to stabilize. We carry too much wounding. As we transmute our wounds and experience our higher consciousness, these kinds of relationships become possible, even probable. So he's saying that if we can reach this higher level, maybe of transparency, we can remain in this state of being in love indefinitely. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, folks, it's 4:10. That's all for me. Click the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm live every Friday from 2:30 to 4. Go to the website, join our Discord from the website. There's a link, and you can start chatting with us right away. Sign up for the newsletter, and get ready for my new video. I hope to get it out next week. It's going to be a doozy, a big one, a great one. One of the greatest videos ever. All right, folks, I love you. Thanks for joining the live stream, and I will see you next time.